What's that at the window?
So, I'm going to talk about two experiences. The first is my mother's experience, and the second is my own. This first one happened sometime in my middle school years, and I would walk home on my own. Feeling tired from school, I would usually come home and sleep right away. But this time, as I was walking in, my mum stopped me. Looking frantic, she asked me where I had gone. Now, my mum is a forgetful and anxious person, so assuming this was another episode, I was ready to brush her off. I started to explain to her I was at school like I normally would be at that time of day. Now looking more confused, she tells me she saw me in my room not too long ago. She then explains that she went to my room to look for something and then she saw what she thought was me. Just to clarify, my mum is standing at the doorway and was only able to see the back of my head. She greets me and asks if I'm hungry and how school was, but fake me doesn't respond. Assuming I'm in a mood, she leaves. Initially, I was uncomfortable after she told me this, but I soon forgot about it. Okay, now for my experience. This one happened around the same time as the first. Around this time, I would wake up in the middle of the night, most of the time around 3 a.m, and I was comfortable with it by this point. I would walk around outside, get some water, then go back to sleep. I wake up again, and I'm so thirsty I head to the kitchen. A little background. My mum also had insomnia. She'd also be up around this time. Not always, but sometimes. As I'm walking over, I notice that all the lights are off, which is strange because my mum always keeps the light on when she is awake. Then I see some movement at the corner of my eye. I look over and see what I fully trusted to be my mum. I mean, it was her height, size, and hair. It even moved like her. A little startled, I say, "Hi, Mum." While keeping my pace, I continued, but while I was walking away, I noticed two things. My mum is the type of person who makes a lot of noise, doing the smallest things. Strangest thing was, I didn't hear anything from her. She didn't say anything, she didn't even make walking noises, even though she wears loose flip-flops. The second thing I noticed was that I startled her, which isn't that strange, but when she jerked a bit, she knocked something plastic over. Literally, the only sound I heard from her. And she picked it up. Still relaxed, I got my water and started to walk back. That's when I noticed that she isn't standing where she was before. In fact, I couldn't spot her at all, but I didn't hear her walking around. So I looked around for her and found nothing. I even called out to her, but got nothing. Then I walked over to my parents' room and looked in. And to my disbelief, she is sound asleep, snoring and all tucked in blankets. She would have had to walk past me to get to her bed, but I didn't see her or even hear her. Horrified, but trying to think rationally, I could only think someone broke in, so I walk the house and find nothing changed, no windows or doors opened. Also very creaky door and windows, so I should have heard it open. I'm curious if anyone else has had something similar happen to them. I would like to hear about it. I was a silent reader here and never thought I would post my experience, but it seems like a lot of people may have explanations as to what happened to me. I was very prone to paranormal experiences as a kid, even when I was a baby, or so my family told me. They took me to doctors to figure out why I was always crying at night, and when they couldn't give us answers, they tried spiritual doctors. They said I was more open to these experiences than normal, and that I had a lot of friends in our home. Fast forward to when I was in high school. I usually come home from school and nobody would be there because my aunt would still be at work and my grandma would still be outside playing cards. Because of this, I would usually go straight to my mum's house near our own, so I could hang out with my brother and sisters. We had different houses. To give you a quick visualization of my mum's house, when you enter their house, it was just a long corridor with 3 doors on the right. At the end of the hallway was the bathroom, and if you go right after reaching the end of the hallway, there was a small kitchen. No doors or windows. When I got to that corridor, everything was dark, but I still thought my sisters would be there since their school would be over too. I immediately went to the second bedroom in the middle of the hallway and knocked on the door. There was no answer. I was about to go back to our house when I glanced at the end of the hallway and saw my baby sister, around 5 or 6 years old, standing there wearing her usual sleeveless holy dress as she wears at home, and with her haircut and everything. I thought I couldn't see her face just because it was dark. I tried going up to her because I still wasn't scared at this point and asking her where the others were. I got maybe 2 meters close to her when she ran to the right into the kitchen. I was bewildered because it was dark and I knew she was scared of the dark. I followed her and switched on the light to the kitchen, and she wasn't there. Nowhere out or in. And that's when I kind of snapped out of it and realized I couldn't see her face. Believe me when I say I ran out of there with all the energy I could muster. I called my mum and turns out they went out for the day, including my sisters. Nobody was home. Was that a doppelganger? Why didn't it have a face? This was more than 10 years ago and I'm still really creeped out by it. Last night I was hanging out with my fiancé at home, watching TV. We have 3 big dogs and a cat, and I think we encountered a mimic. For context, my brother has his bedroom next to the garage, and he has a private entrance door from the side of the house. The garage shares a wall with the living room, and the inner door that leads from the laundry room to the garage was open. He'd gone out around 8:45 p.m. to pick up his son at the grocery store he works at, since my nephew was off at 9 p.m. My fiancé and I were in the living room with all 3 dogs when, at around 9 p.m, we both heard my brother and nephew talking in the garage. The voices were very clearly theirs, but no actual words were discernible. My fiancé asked,
"How the heck did I get back so soon?"
2 of our dogs started growling and whining while looking at the wall that the garage and the living room share, ears pinned back, eyes wide and teeth bared. The cat started hissing while also staring at the same wall. They all looked frightened. The cat ran to hide in our room and the biggest of my dogs got up and headed towards the garage, so I followed, thinking the guys had just gotten home. I quickly realized after looking through the empty garage that there was no way they could be home anyway because it was only 9:05 p.m. And as I mentioned earlier, my nephew got off work at 9. He works in the next town over and it takes about 20 minutes to go between our house and the grocery store. When I went back to the living room, my fiancé asked me if they were home and I explained that there was no one in the house but the animals and us. I got worried, thinking maybe something horrid had happened to my brother and nephew, i.e. getting into a car wreck, etc. I kind of shrugged it off and sat back down to continue watching TV. Pretty much as soon as I sat down, there was a very loud crashing sound that came from the garage. It sounded like something heavy had fallen. The dogs went crazy barking, so my fiancé and I went to see what fell. The attic trapdoor in the garage had fallen open, and the ladder leading up there had come crashing down. It's notable that the trapdoor has a 2x4 that goes across the door to keep it from falling open like it did. Only by flipping the 2x4 aside does the door open, and being that the heavy bolt that secures said 2x4 to the ceiling is rusted, it's pretty difficult to flip the plank side. I cautiously climbed the ladder, thinking there was possibly an intruder up there. Our attic is pretty much empty and there are no places to hide, so when I got up there and flipped the light switch, it was plainly obvious that there wasn't anyone up there. I got absolutely freaked out and left the attic as fast as I could safely. I closed the trapdoor and struggled to flip the 2x4 to secure the door again. My fiancée finally got it secured and we hauled ass back to the living room. My heart was racing and felt like it was going to explode. Finally at 9:30, I saw my brother's Jeep pull into the driveway and they came inside. I was telling my brother about what had just happened in the 45 minutes he'd been gone. Like all of our family, he is a big believer in the paranormal and believed me without a doubt. He told me that he often hears loud movement in the garage at all hours of the night, especially since our father passed away suddenly late last year. He passed in our house. I said I thought it was our father's spirit visiting us until my brother and fiancé mentioned mimics. Everyone in my immediate family has seen and heard apparitions in our house, so I wasn't too surprised. However, the mere thought of a mimic in our house terrifies me to no end. Does anyone on this sub have any experience with mimics? Are they dangerous? And if so, what are the repercussions, if any, of letting it remain in our home? I have experienced paranormal things since I was a child. I have always been open and receptive to paranormal things, and possibly to a fault. When I started dating my now husband, I would tell him all sorts of stories of things that I experienced through my childhood and teenage years. He has always been fascinated by the paranormal, and my stories always intrigued him, but he never experienced anything himself until we moved in together. I've always been convinced that I had a clinger spirit that has attached itself to me somewhere in life and just stayed along for the ride. We've lived in different locations and always experienced the same things at each home. It was never anything malicious, and I always joked that my Casper was just doing things to say hi and let me know he's there. My husband just laughed it off because there was never a real issue and everything seemed harmless and playful. We have walked into our offices with our desk chairs spinning when no one was in the room. We have smart TVs and they all rotate, turning on in the middle of the night, as if someone is trying to watch TV, scrolling through the apps to select Netflix or Hulu. I've also seen it just run through the different HDMI options. Items that have specific locations, like keys, will end up in random places like under the kitchen sink or in a sock drawer. We shut our closet doors at night, and we will wake up with them wide open. I can't sleep if there is even a sliver of light showing in my room, and any light will wake me from a dead sleep. I wake up to the bathroom light switching on quite often, which requires me to get out of bed and turn it off, so I can go back to sleep. My husband's computer powers on by itself, and it's a big tower with a power button that takes a little effort to push. We've become used to these things, but lately, something else has started, and it started mimicking me. Lately, when I'm downstairs, and my husband is in his office upstairs, he will walk to the landing of our stairwell and ask me if I called his name. Usually if I need something or have a question for him, I will just call his cell if I'm too lazy to run up the stairs or if I'm in the middle of cooking and can't leave the stove. Even when I'm laying down in bed, he's still on his computer in the same room. he would pull off his headphones and ask me what I need. For a while, I was thinking, am I losing my mind? Am I actually saying something and not realizing it? He has stopped gaming midstream to come find me, aggravated that I was calling him, when I literally haven't said a word. Every time I tell him that I didn't say his name, he gets this confused look, like he was trying to read my face to see if I'm telling the truth. Yesterday was the turning point. I was laying in bed reading, and he threw a bottle of water on the bed next to me. I asked him why he brought me a bottle of water, and he said, "Do you not remember asking me for a bottle?" I told him no and pointed to a bottle of water on the nightstand that I brought to bed when I laid down. He said, "You literally just yelled down for me to bring you a cold bottle of water." I explained to him that I did not say that because I had my own cold water that I brought to bed. We both agreed that something really strange is happening, because this has just started within the last month. And I don't know if this is my entity that has followed me just now becoming vocal, or if this is something new. We're both of sound mind, and neither of us have any sort of mental issue that we're aware of that would have me speaking without knowing it, or him hearing things. Aside from extreme annoyance, is there a real cause for concern? Okay, so I recently moved to an area known to be haunted, but I never really thought about it. Though nothing physical has happened, there is something mimicking my family's voice. So I currently am staying in this cabin with my mum, dad, my 2 sisters and my dog. On the first week, my mum claimed to hear my little sister say, "Mum," in a tired voice from downstairs. When she went downstairs, my sister was fast asleep in the bedroom. Like, okay, creepy, but I decided to make a joke about it and move on. Then just earlier today, my parents went out to buy some things for face-to-face school. So it was my younger sister upstairs and my older sister in the living room. I was in my room with the dog on the bed. I was talking to my boyfriend over the phone and texting a few friends. Then I heard my dad say, "I'm home." And it seemed like my dog heard it too, because he started whining and scratching at the door. He usually does that when my dad comes home. So I told my boyfriend I had to go, and I went out to greet my mum and dad. When I went outside, no one was there except for my sister. My dog barked once, which was kind of creepy knowing he hardly barks. When I asked my sister if she heard our dad come in, she said no. I normally would have thought it was her, but my dad's voice is deep, and my sister could never pull it off, even if she tried. Do any of you guys know what kind of entity mimics voices so perfectly like that? In my teens, when I lived with my parents, we would all hear a mimic off and on for years. Even my older sister said she experienced it before she moved out. I'd be playing video games with my door closed, and on more than one occasion, I've heard my mum call my name from down the hall. I would immediately pause the game and crack my door open, and mum wouldn't be standing there. I'd search through the house, and of course, she'd be sound asleep in her room, as she had stopped in to say goodnight hours ago. After a while, I got used to that, so the next time I heard what I thought was my mum's voice, I'd ignore it and wait. If it was really her, I could tell if she entered the hallway by watching the light from the crack under my door from my bed, because real mum would make her way to my room. If I didn't see those shadows, I knew it wasn't her. Only a handful of times have I heard any one of my other family members' voices, while I was the only one home. When I was like 10, I rode the bus home from school and would often beat my parents home. I'd set up in the front room and do my homework while I waited for them to get back home. Nokia bricks were a thing, so I'd give them a call and say I made it home. I would get focused on my homework or daydreaming or whatever, and I'd hear my mum or dad call out that they were home from the same hallway by my bedroom. Only the problem was that I did not hear the loud garage door or garage entry door open or shut, just a sudden spontaneous voice out of nowhere. And my dog would hear the voice too. Bark, 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 visible confusion and then growling. My mum would also regularly pop into my room or wherever I was and ask if I had called her, or if I said something. The answer was mostly no. She would also pop in with an answer to an irrelevant question a mimic apparently asked on my behalf. On occasion, I'd catch my mum respond to a mimic's voice that I did not hear. Even I'd do the same. Mum would also tell me she heard my voice or my dad's voice while she was getting ready for bed or deep into the night. On another occasion, we both heard my sister interject in a conversation of ours from the other room. We were having some conversation about a TV series we liked in the kitchen. Then both of us heard my sister's voice say, "Hello, I'm here," clear as day from the other room. This is years after my sister moved out. She still had a key for emergencies, but one look around the corner told us that she didn't use it that day. Kind of amazing that we both heard that, and the mimic must have been holding on to my sister's 16-year-old voice for years. The most disturbing aspect of the mimic was that I felt it could distort or alter our speech in real time, as if we were speaking through a curtain and that was between us. My mum and I are having a conversation about whatever, the groceries, sure. Mum would ask what I wanted. I'd tell her some stuff I was craving. She responds with some of the ingredients that'd be good, and I heard her say, "Oh, how about you get lost?" Which was completely out of context, and the words I heard didn't even match how her mouth moved. I asked, "What?" And she repeated, I said, "Ooh, how about some fresh basil?" If you made it here, thanks for listening. Feels good to share these little experiences. Hello watchers and listeners, thank you so much for watching. If you liked that video, please hit the like button and consider subscribing if you haven't already. A huge thank you to all the Reddit users who allowed me to use their stories. A link to each story will be in the description below. If you have a story you'd like to share on my channel, please send it to my email, which is also in the description below. As always, thank you all so much for your continued support. I really do appreciate it. And remember,
Papa loves you.